Hey guys, thanks for joining me for another Yu-Gi-Oh! Master Duel video, and today I want to kind of start a beginner's guide series, and it's something that I don't know that I've seen a lot of people do out there. So normally you're used to seeing like deck lists and like combo videos and stuff like that. I want to do something that's more of like a beginner focused video. So what I'm going to do is this is going to be a beginner's guide to Dragonmaids, and what I'm going to do in these guides is rather than show you maybe the most top tier meta version of the deck, I'm going to show you just a fairly pure build of a deck and explain the mechanics of what that archetype is trying to do so that you understand how to actually play that deck. And then the hope would be from there, then once you understand the deck well enough, then maybe you look into the more meta relevant versions of the deck. So for example, Dragonmaid, if you want to try to play it more competitively, you might do a Dragon Link version of the deck, or you might do a branded version of the deck, or maybe some combination of that, right? But for this, I'm going to do, my deck list here will be a fairly pure build. And like I said, the purpose is just for a beginner to explain how the deck actually works and what it's meant to do, right? So I'm going to go ahead and start by talking about there are two types of kind of little Dragonmaids. And what the Dragonmaids are they're basically going to be like the female versions like what you see right here. So they have like human versions, right? And then a Dragonmaid will also have a larger dragon version. And what you'll notice about these, if we look specifically at Parlor Dragonmaid, they will each have a direct counterpart that is the same element as them. So Parlor's dragon counterpart is Lorpar. And you'll notice because the name of the dragon will be the same name as the human version, but the letters are just mixed up. So Lorpar is just the word Parlor with the letters mixed up. Okay. Now there's an interaction that they have with each other. So basically what happens at the beginning of the battle phase, the little Dragonmaids can essentially transform into the big dragons. As long as the big dragon is in your hand or graveyard, at the beginning of the battle phase, you can take the little monster, bounce it to your hand, and then special summon the dragon. Now, the exception to that is you don't have to have the direct counterpart, right? So like Parlor does not have to have Lorpar to be able to transform. But what you do have to have is a particular level. So what you're going to notice is we've got Parlor and we got Kitchen, who are level 3. They can only transform into the level 8 dragons, and the level 8s will be either Lorpar, which is the Parlor counterpart, and then Kitchen's counterpart, which is Tinkek, okay, which is Kitchen with just the letters mixed up. So they can go into either of those. So Parlor can transform into Tinkek, and Kitchen can transform into Lorpar, even though they're different elements. Okay, it's just the level that matters. Then for the level 2s, we have Nurse, and we have Laundry. And then those respectively can transform into the level 7s, which are going to be Ernest, which is Nurse mixed up, and then Nudjarl, which is Laundry mixed up, right? So that's the basics of how they can transform. So just the general way that these work that they have in common is any of these low-level ones, beginning of the battle phase, you can activate their effects to transform into the dragon, provided it's the proper level. So the 2s go to 7s, the 3s go to 8s. And then what the dragons all have in common is as long as you control a fusion monster, they can't be destroyed by card effects. And then at the end of the battle phase, you can transform or swap back into the humanoid versions from your hand. So an example would be, let's say I have Parlor on field and maybe I have Lorpar in the graveyard, beginning of the battle phase. I return Parlor to my hand, get Lorpar to the field to do my battling, and then at the end of the battle, Lorpar can return to hand, and I can bring Parlor back out. Okay, that's just an example of how a basic interaction works. Now, there's one monster that's kind of like unique, and that's Chamber, and Chamber's a level 4. And what's unique about Chamber is that she's not restricted to a 7 or an 8. She can actually transform into any level 7 or higher, including the fusions. In order for her to transform into a fusion, though, it has to be in the graveyard and it has to have been properly summoned. And this does come into play with one of the interactions because there's a way to very easily not properly summon one of them. And if it's in the graveyard, then you can't do that. But as long as it was properly summoned, you can. Okay? So with that, that's the basics of how the normal Dragonmaid interaction works. So with that, I'm not going to cover every card in the deck, but I'm going to talk about just mainly the Dragonmaid stuff, right? So let's start with Dragonmaid Nurse. This one is usually only like a 1 of in the deck. I mean, if you could go 2 of if you're doing like a super pure build like I'm doing, but I just went with 1. What she does is if she's normal or special summoned, you can special summon a level 4 or lower Dragonmaid from your graveyard, and then she once again has the trade out effects there, right, that we talked about earlier. Kitchen, when you summon her, you can add a Dragonmaid monster from your deck to your hand, and then you discard a card. or you have to discard a Dragonmaid card. So what's nice about this is you want basically Dragonmaids in the graveyard. The idea is you want to try to get the big dragons in the graveyard so that the little ones during the battle phase can transform into them, essentially getting them out of the graveyard. And then at the end of the battle phase, the big ones will go to your hand. So essentially there's a process where the dragons will start in the graveyard, they can come out to battle, and then they'll actually end up in your hand, and then they have hand effects. So it's a really nice setup that they have. So with Kitchen, what you can do is you essentially could pick a let's say you just need a certain dragon in your graveyard. Let's say you need a level 7 in your graveyard because you want to transform into it. You could use this to search it out and then just discard that same card. Or maybe you have a dragon in your hand you want in the graveyard. Then you can use this to search out any Dragonmaid, like a different one that you want, like maybe Chamber, because you want to get use her effect. Then you just discard the other one. So it's a very good effect there. Then we have Laundry. I would say most people play this at either 1 or 0. It's honestly not that good. I just have it in there because it's a different named Dragonmaid card, and it's a pure build, so I want to try to run at least one of each one. But when she is normal or special summon, you just mill 3 cards from the top of your deck. This can be good because, once again, this deck likes certain cards in the graveyard. There's a trap card called Dragonmaid Tidying. There's a card, the actual fusion spell card, and then the big dragons. Those are all things you want in the graveyard. So there are a lot of things you want. The reason why she's not very good is because it's completely random, the 3 cards you get, and you might not mill the right things, and it's kind of like a dead effect a lot of times. So she's kind of just a random card. You just use her if you're desperate, but she's there, right? And then we have Parlor, who I'd say is one of the better ones. She just picks any Dragonmaid card in your deck and sends it to the graveyard. And it's very good that it's any card, not just a monster, because Dragonmaid Tidying and then Dragonmaid Changeover are 2 very important cards you want in the graveyard. So a lot of the times I will use her effect to get one of those into the graveyard, or if I'm really desperate and just need a big dragon, I can use it on a big dragon. Okay. And then Chamber, when she is summoned, you get to add a Dragonmaid spell or trap to hand, which is awesome because you being able to search any of those out is great. Okay, so that's pretty much the basics of the little monsters and what their effects do. The big monsters, as I told you before, they're unaffected by, or they can't be destroyed by card effects while you control a fusion monster. And then they can bounce back to your hand at the end of the battle phase and trade out with the small one. And then they all have like a different type of hand effect that they do. So the Earth one can quick effect, discard it, special summon a level 4 or lower Dragonmaid from your hand. So it's just a good way to get an extra body on board if you need to do it. Nud Jarl says you can discard this card, target one monster in either graveyard, and shuffle it into the deck. I honestly very rarely use that. It could come into play, though, against some opponent decks where you want to get rid of something from their graveyard that they're going to try to abuse later on. I think it can definitely work. It's kind of like a less good DD Crow because it's not quick effect and it doesn't banish. But you could maybe get some use out of that. But mostly this is just a unique named Dragonmaid that I used to tag in and out of, right? Okay, and then the fire one, this fire one has come in very clutch for me, actually. The quick effect on it is kind of like an honest effect. So you discard this card, target one Dragonmaid monster you control, it gains 2,000 attack till the end of the turn. So this is a quick effect, and you can do it during the damage step when your opponent is battling you. And I usually use this to surprise them and have them attack me and actually kill their own monster. Or in a situation where an opponent has something really beefy that I can't normally get over, I sometimes will get into this to get the attack I need to get over. Because I can get my Dragonmaids up to like, 5,000 plus attack with this effect, which is usually safe to get over almost anything in the game. So this effect has actually come in handy. And then Lorpar says you can discard this card, target a face-up monster on the field, and players cannot activate that monster's effects on the field this turn. So this is great. It's not a quick effect, but during your main phase, you can use it very aggressively. Like if your opponent sends up some negates, like a Baron de Fleur or something, you essentially can use it to force them to use the Baron negate or just let Baron get negated. But it's basically a way to bait out a negate. This is going to end up in the graveyard anyways, where you probably want it, and then you can just bring it back out during the battle phase. So that's why I do run 2 Lorpars in mine, because I think Lorpar is probably the best of the big dragons. And I think the fire one and earth one are kind of like both kind of solid in their own ways, and the water one, unfortunately, is probably the worst. But yeah, that's pretty much the gist of how the big monsters work, and then once again, your interactions like that. For spells and traps, I'll go over the Dragonmaid ones, and I'll just talk about a couple that I use specifically with like Dragonmaid interactions, right? So Dragonmaid Hospitality is pretty much a 3 of in most builds. It's so good. You can special summon any Dragonmaid from your hand or graveyard, and then basically you take the counterpart version of that card and send it from deck to graveyard. So an example is if you send Parlor, like the small wind one, like if you summon that with this, then you send Lorpar, which is the big dragon, from deck to graveyard. And you could do it either way. I could summon the big dragon and send the small monster to the graveyard. Ideally, what you would want to do is you would want to use this to summon the human, the small monster, and then send the dragon. But it can work the other way just to get, because even if you put the human dragon maids in the graveyard, it's still good to have them somewhere because you can still get access to them. So this is just nice, and you can only activate one of these per turn. So it can be kind of dead if you draw 2 or 3 of them in the same hand. It actually can be bad, but usually that doesn't happen, and it is a very good card. So I do like Dragonmaid Hospitality. Dragonmaid Changeover is kind of the heart and soul of the deck. This is your polymerization. This is what allows you to fuse. I would say you're very safe usually running this at 1. This particular build, because it's a pure build and I had room, I did run 2. But the reason why you typically only need this at 1, you basically can reuse it over and over and over again. Anytime it's in the graveyard, you can just bounce any Dragonmaid card to your hand, and then you just add this back to your hand and you can reuse it, and you can play Changeover as many times as you want in a turn. It just allows you to fuse dragon monsters. And the thing that's cool with Changeover, you don't have to fuse specifically a Dragonmaid monster. You can fuse any dragon monster. So there are applications where there could be generic dragon fusions you want to use this with, and you could kind of get into it that way. But I pretty much just use it for Dragonmaids right now, right? Now, because it's reusable, as long as it's in your hand or graveyard, you can constantly just reuse it. It's once per turn that you can add it to your hand, but the actual activation to fuse, you can do multiple times. So an example could be, if I start with this in hand, I can fuse into something, use its effect, bounce something, get it back in hand, fuse again. If you have Dragonmaid Welcome, you could actually use it 3 times in the same turn. And we'll talk about Dragonmaid Welcome here in a second. But the reason why you would maybe want to run it at 2 is because if your opponent has a way to banish this from the graveyard, then you're kind of screwed because you're locked out of doing fusions at all. In the normal way you build this deck, there's no way to get this from being banished. So I think playing 2 as a safety net isn't the worst idea, especially if you know your opponent has a way to banish it. Because if your opponent knows what they're doing, they're going to try and banish it if they can, right? Here's Dragonmaid Welcome. I think this is just a nice one of. I don't know that I would run more than one of that, but it's continuous. And all your monsters are going to gain 100 attack and defense for each Dragonmaid you control. If you control 2 or more Dragonmaid monsters, you can target a Dragonmaid card in your graveyard and add it to your hand. So for free, right? So an example could be, I have Changeover in hand, play it, infuse, use Changeover's effect to bounce a card to add it to hand, fuse again. Then I could use Welcome's effect to just add it from graveyard to hand, and I could fuse a 3rd time. Now, you would need a ton of dragon monsters to be able to do that. I don't know that I've ever fused 3 times in the same turn, but I've fused twice many times before. So this is a very solid card. Like, the attack buff is just a nice little bonus, but that's not really why you're playing it. You're playing it because you want to freely just add Dragonmaids back from your graveyard to your hand, right? And then, if this card is sent to the graveyard, your opponent cannot target Dragonmaid monsters you control with card effects this turn. That's honestly not that great. The opponent can very easily play around that. They just, the time that this catches your opponent off is if they just Feather Duster at the beginning of the turn or something and don't know that it has that effect, and then you can kind of catch them and say, nope, you can't target now for the rest of the turn. That's really when you're going to get it. But a skilled player that actually understands what your deck does, they're not going to like destroy this. They're just going to let it sit there. All right. So, and then the other Dragonmaid card I want to talk about is Dragonmaid Tidying. This is an incredibly good card. So what this card does is you can basically play it, and you can target one of your opponent's monsters and one of your own and basically bounce them both back to the hand, which is very good because it's a way just to get rid of like some troublesome your opponent has. You usually don't mind your stuff going back to hand, and one of your fusions has a really good interaction with this. And then the other thing that's great about this is that when it's in the graveyard, you can banish it to special summon any Dragonmaid from your graveyard. So it's a great way to, once again, get recursion. Maybe you get one of your big fusions out, your opponent gets rid of it. You can use this to resummon that big fusion out of the graveyard, provided it was summoned properly, right? So that's very good. So this is a target I like to hit with Parlor. And I'll like intentionally send this to the graveyard, and then I know I have a way to like very easily just special summon more Dragon Maids from the graveyard with that. But it's very good on field as well, once again, to disrupt and bounce your opponent's stuff back to them. So with that, let me just cover a couple other cards that aren't Dragon Maid cards, but I use as a specific interaction, right? So we have Foolish Burial and then Foolish Burial Goods. These are actually pretty good here because, once again, the deck is built around like having stuff in the graveyard. So Foolish Burial is simply just to put whatever Dragon Maid you need in the graveyard, whether it be a big monster or a little monster, but it's just to put something you need there. Foolish Burial Goods is incredible because you can just put Changeover or Tidying in the graveyard, right? Because remember, that's the other reason you get away with playing Changeover at 1, even though it's like it's so important you need to fuse for the deck to be good, but it's searchable and it's reusable from the graveyard. So by playing a card like Foolish Burial Goods, or Parlor just can send it right to the grave, or Kitchen can add it to the hand and then send it to grave. So you have multiple ways just to search this thing out and get it in the graveyard. And then once this is in the graveyard, you can literally just during your turn add it to your hand by bouncing one of your Dragon Maids. That's all you got to do. It's very easy. And then you're fusing away and you're going crazy, right? So Foolish Burial Goods has a lot of nice targets that you can use in the deck. So I think that's very important, right? Now the fusions, I'm not going to talk about like link monsters and stuff. That's, you guys can figure that out based on what you want. But as a beginner's guide, we're just talking about what do the Dragon Maids do. So we got two boss monsters. We have House Dragon Maid and we have Dragon Maid Xiao. And it's awesome because House is the human version, and then Xiao is like her transformed version. It's very awesome, right? So House, we would call actually the smaller of the two fusions, even though she's 3000 attack, level 9. But you fuse her with just a Dragon Maid and any dragon monster, which is pretty solid. Something I will say is I think Super Poly can work in this deck, especially if your opponent is using dragons. You can actually Super Poly their dragon and one of your Dragon Maids into this or the other fusion. So Super Poly is definitely very usable in the deck. But once again, we won't look at that right now just because we're focused on what the Dragon Maids do. So what you do with her is once per turn during the standby, you can target a Dragon Maid that you have on the field other than herself, and you can special summon from the graveyard a Dragon Maid that is one level higher or lower than it. So basically, if I have Chamber, the level 4, I could go and grab a level 3 from my graveyard, right? If I have like one of the big dragons, like the level 7, I could summon a level 8 from the graveyard. So basically, it's meant to kind of get one of the Dragon Maids that's kind of close in level to one that you have on the field. And that's during any standby. So you summon her, you pass turn to your opponent. During their standby, you can use her effect and summon something. Now, what's really cool about House is if a Dragon Maid is returned to your hand, you can destroy a monster that your opponent controls. And it's not once per turn. So if I have her out, and let's say I have two little Dragon Maids on the field, as soon as they enter battle phase, those Dragon Maids, when they bounce to transform, that triggers her, and she can basically destroy two of their things. Like every time you bounce, and it's not once per turn, you get to pop one of their monsters, which is really cool. Okay. Then we have Dragon Maid Xiao, which is the big dragon. So that is a Dragon Maid monster, and then any level 5 or higher dragon. Once again, there's a lot, especially if you're playing a branded player, like there's a lot of high level dragons out there that you can very easily like Super Poly into this, right? So definitely y'all can run Super Poly if you want to in this deck for sure. And then you can put generic Super Poly targets in your extra deck, right? So this guy, or this girl, I guess they're all girls, right? So she's crazy too, because during each standby phase, you can special summon a level 9 or lower Dragon Maid from my hand or graveyard. So it's literally like you can summon anything. And actually House, I should double check. Yeah, House can also summon from hand. But so Xiao is just a better version of House, because Xiao says I just summon any Dragon Maid from hand or graveyard. House has the exception that I have to target something first and then pick something that's a level higher or lower than the thing I targeted. So Xiao is just better. And then what Xiao is an Omni Negate, which is amazing. So that means spell, trap, monster effect, any effect your opponent tries to activate, Xiao can negate it once per turn. But if Xiao does negate it, Xiao then immediately returns the extra deck and transforms into a House. Now, when Xiao transforms into House this way, House is not considered to have been properly summoned. So if that House enters the graveyard, you can't special summon her from the graveyard with Chamber. Because something I had mentioned earlier, right, is Chamber is a level 4, and at the start of the battle phase, she can bounce to the hand and special summon a level 7 or higher Dragonmaid monster from your hand or graveyard. That does include the fusions. So if I have a Shao or a House in the graveyard, then Chamber can summon it if it was summoned properly. So that means if I summoned it with changeover. But House, it's very common that House will come out off of a Shao negate, and then that House at some point enters the graveyard. If it was summoned with Shao, that was not properly summoned, so that cannot be summoned from the graveyard. So just make sure you watch out for that. But usually, like if your Shao is in the graveyard, it will have been summoned properly. So Shao can be summoned off of Chamber, which is really nasty to just get this back and be an Omni negate. Now this negate is a hard once per turn. So that means if you summon 2 Shaos at once, which it's very common I can get 2 Shaos out, you can't negate 2 things the same turn. If one Shao negates it, then the second one can't do it. So you do have to keep that in mind. I usually try to get 1 House and 1 Shao out together because it is a really nice wombo combo where I've got a negate and then I bounce something and then House can destroy something. I really like that, right? So with that, yeah, that's pretty much the deck. So what I want to do, because I think maybe explaining, especially for a beginner, you might not fully be able to visualize what's happening. So all I'm going to do is I'm just going to go into like some easy solo stages just so you can see the deck operate and I can just show you what it does. Sure, we'll go against Gladiator Beast. We should be okay here against Gladiator Beast. So we'll just hop into it, and then this way you guys can just kind of see what the deck... I guess we'll go into the 5-star duel here, and then let's go my deck, and then let's swap. And we're going to go into Dragonmaid. And then this way you can kind of just see it in action. I didn't like pre-record any fights or anything. We're just going to see what I naturally draw. And then I can just kind of explain the process to you guys of how this works, right? All right, so let's hop in with the Dragonmaid deck. We'll just do random. I don't care if I'm first or second. And the nice thing about doing solo too is then the enemy turns will go very quickly, right? We don't have to sit and wait for them. And then also I don't want to have to worry about a timer because I want to sit and explain things to you guys as I go. So that's why we're going into solo. All right, so I'm going first. So this is actually like a super bad hand. And that's the thing. Dragonmaids, especially pure, can be very bricky. So I guess let's play Dragonmaid Welcome just to put it out there. Once again, remember this is an attack and defense buff for all my Dragonmaids, but I have to control Dragonmaids. And if I control 2 or more and get something from the graveyard, this is really bad because I just got like generic stuff and then 1 Earnest, which I can't summon right now. So I'm actually just going to pass and let the enemy take their turn. They hopefully won't OTK me, but like, yeah, if I was in any type of like meta situation, I would just be dead here, right? So I'm sure I'll use Ash that. I'll Ash that. All right, and then hopefully they just wipe through their turn very quickly. Actually, if they're smart, they can use Gladiator Beast stuff to tag and then destroy my spell card, which they'll probably do. I hope they end up just putting a bunch of stuff from me to Feather Duster. Yep, and then they're going to tag, and they're probably going to go into the thing that destroys a spell or trap, I think. We'll see. I kind of hope Gladiator Beast actually gets new support. That would be very cool. All right, go ahead and attack me. Yeah, and then they're tagging out and getting extra damage. All right, that's fine. Oh, yeah, and they can negate, but I think they have to discard from their hand. Oh, okay. This isn't a great hand. Like, so this is where it can get bricky. If I draw like all big dragons, like I just can't do anything. So yeah, I actually think I have to, I can send him to the graveyard and negate an effect, but I've got no way to do anything from grave. Yeah, this is just kind of dead. So let me just, I guess let's go into another one. I'll have to retry. Let's just retry, get a better draw so you guys can actually see what the deck does. I'll do going first actually, just so I can start right away. Yeah, that was just a gross draw, which can happen. I think normally you'd play like Pot of Prosperities and things to add consistency to it, which I've got right there. Good. So now we've got consistency, right? So good. Let's do this. This is like miles better. So let's see an actual good hand here. So we'll use Pot. We'll do 6 cards. And I'm just going to pick 6 not Dragonmaids so I can keep all those Dragonmaids going. So we'll just use those. That's fine. Okay, and I won't activate any quick effects. So yeah, I've got a really nice monster set up there. I've got, yeah, some really good stuff here. Okay, what would I like from this batch? Hospitality, probably. Hospitality's pretty good. And I've got a Dragonmaid to use with it, right? All right, and then these can just go back, whatever. Okay, that's fine. All right, so here's an example of like what I can do, right? So what I can do is I can play Hospitality. Or wait, that's changeover. Sorry, let's do. Oh, I have changeover too. Okay, so we're gonna play Hospitality. So remember, this will special summon a Dragonmaid from hand or graveyard, and then I send the counterpart from deck to graveyard. So let's do the water one. So we're gonna summon that in defense mode, And then we're going to say, yep, send to the graveyard, and we'll get the water counterpart to the grave. So now I have an option for this to tag out, and I'm going to use her effect to mill 3 and just hope I get some good stuff. Oh, we did. What did we get here? Okay, so we got Ernest, and we got Nudyarl's in there already. Okay, and we got a kitchen in there. Okay, so now what I can do with this is I could special summon a level 4 lore from my hand. I don't really see the need to do that. So let's just go ahead and normal summon. Now this will let me add a spell or trap to my hand, so we'll do that. Now normally if I didn't have it, I would grab changeover, but I already do have changeover, right? And then hospitality is another one you'd grab, but I've already used it this turn. I could take a trap card, but I'm actually going to take welcome. So now welcome on this turn is going to look pretty good, right? So now what I can do is I can play welcome. They're going to get an attack defense buff. And then since I control at least 2, I can activate this. And I can just fish any of these out of my graveyard, right? So now I could get kitchen if I wanted to. I'm actually going to take this so I have it for next turn. The other thing I guess I could have done was I could have done a... This would have been a turn I could have done a triple fusion, but we'll just do changeover, okay? And as long as you have a big dragon, you can get Xiao. So we're going to get Xiao out. And we're going to do the big dragon. And then we will do... sure, let's do her. We'll let those all fuse together. Okay, and now we've got Xiao. Okay, and so now I have an Omni Negate on board. And during the standby phase, I'm going to special summon. Now in my graveyard, I have changeover. So what I could do at any time during my turn is I could bounce one of my Dragonmaid monsters. I believe it has to be a monster. I'll double check that. Yep, it has to be a monster. Right now, I don't really want to bounce a monster to get changeover to hand. So I think I'm just going to leave it as is. And then what we'll do is we will pass turn. So what's going to happen is on their standby phase, Xiao gets a free special summon. So, yep, and I'll say I'm going to use Xiao. I'm going to get a free special summon. Now, what's cool about this is when I do this free special summon, I get that monster's effect. So I'm going to summon Chamber, and then I'm going to get to add a spell or trap. So let's go ahead and do that. And then here, let's go ahead and grab, sure, we'll grab a Tidying, and I can use that next turn. Okay, and now these are both things that could tag out. So we'll see if they go battle phase. Now, I could use my Omni Negate. I'm not going to, unless I need to, because I prefer to keep Xiao on board, right? But if I need to, if they try to destroy my things, then I'll Omni Negate and go into house. That's fine. You can keep adding to your hand. I don't care. Now that we actually got like a real turn, like they won't have any chance against us, right? That's fine. You can keep doing that. That's fine. Go ahead. Go ahead. Bring out all your stuff. Sure, you can test Tiger. Sure, that's fine. So now you're trying to destroy my... Sure, let's do it. That's fine. Because then we can show off house. So that's going to Omni Negate, and I believe it destroys. So that will negate. Yep, and destroy. And then we go back, and then we trade into house. Now remember, this house is not a proper summon, so we can't summon her from the graveyard. Okay, now we go standby. Now during standby, instead of just summoning anything, she has to target something first. So I'm going to draw. Okay, and then we're going to go standby, and I'm going to say yes, and then I can target one. So now if I target a level 4, I can special a level 3 from the graveyard. And I get her effect to add one to hand, and then I discard one. So now I could add... Let me see, I don't... oh, yeah, so what I could do, this is actually a pretty nice combo. So we haven't done anything with the wind one, so we're going to add Parlor, and then I'm actually going to discard Parlor. And then what I can do with that is Hospitality now can summon the Parlor. So I'm going to do that. That'll summon Parlor from graveyard. And then it's going to send the counterpart, which is going to be Lorpar. And then since Parlor was summoned, Parlor can send a card to the graveyard. And it's like, I got a lot of monsters. So here, it's like I could send another big dragon, just to have more things to tag into. Or I could send the trap to get a special summon. We'll send a big dragon. So sure, let's send you and have another big dragon in there. Okay, so now we've got a pretty spicy turn. Now I can just use Welcome to flat out... Actually, what I'm going to do is I'm going to add this to hand. Okay, I could have gotten Changeover, but I want to show you how Changeover works. So we're going to do Changeover's effect. I can just add it to my hand from the graveyard, and I just bounce something. So sure, let's just bounce this back to my hand. And then since a monster bounced, House gets to destroy a monster, and it's not a once per turn. So I'm going to say yes. We're going to destroy that and get that out of the way. Okay, and now I've got Changeover, which I could go into another house if I wanted to. I could normal summon that again, but I've already used the effect, right? Or what I could do is I could fuse and get rid of House and go into a big dragon. But let me just go into battle phase just so I can show you. So let's go into a battle phase. Now watch this. All these little ones get the option to transform. And this is the main gimmick. So let's pick the level 3. And then she can transform into any level 8 from my graveyard. So I could do the wind one, right? And we'll go attack position. Now remember, because I control a fusion, these big dragons... so we're going to do all these. You can go into a 7. The big dragons can't be destroyed by card effects, right? So we'll go face up attack. Okay, and then we'll tag out with this one. Yep. And we'll go into this one. And we'll go like that. All right, and then right here, and you can see, if you actually get it going, look at the card advantage I'm developing because I'm returning stuff from my graveyard, bouncing to my hand. My hand is like 8 cards right now. It's like crazy. So when it actually gets working, it's crazy. Now I can go battle phase and just like attack out for game here. Now you might be thinking, wow, that's crazy. Why isn't the deck better? Well, it's very easy to counter, right? So, but once again, there are more meta relevant versions with branded and links and all that. Now, what would happen is if I didn't kill them, right? At the end of this battle phase, all of those dragons can go back to my hand and bring the little counterparts back to the field. Any of the little ones, their effects for summoning will go off if they haven't yet that turn. And now those big ones are in my hand that I can use their hand effects again. And I can do changeover and bring out more Xiaos because I got big dragons in my hand. So anyways, guys, there you go. That is the beginner guide to Dragonmaid. Hopefully this helps you understand the strategy and what the deck is doing. If you like this video and want to see more Yu-Gi-Oh! Beginner guides, please let me know. I think I might try to do a few more of these. Thanks for watching. We'll catch y'all on the next one.